Welcome to a new episode of Sanford Says. My name is Lisa Holder, Communications Officer, and your host. Today's topic is going to be code enforcement, and we have a great guest with us today. His name is Tony Raimondo. You may know that name if you're familiar with Sanford. Tony Raimondo is a former Deputy Police Chief for the City of Sanford Police Department. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, Lisa, it's good to be here. Thank you.
And your new role with the City of Sanford is Development Services Director. And so, Tony, you've been here in that role a couple months now at City Hall, is that right?
Yeah, it's hard to believe I transitioned about 3 months ago from the police department over to City Hall.
Yes, and so we're so glad to have you here. We wouldn't see you as much at City Hall, but now we get to see you almost every day, which is wonderful. But today we're talking about code enforcement, particularly because there's been a change in Florida law. And a lot of the items that City of Sanford enforces are not local ordinances. They're actually state ordinances. So maybe speak to that, Tony. So we want to really hit that home that it is not laws that the City of Sanford make. It's laws that the state of Florida makes that we must follow and enforce. So, Tony, code enforcement, a new world for you, so to speak, I would imagine. How's things going down there?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's not really a far stretch because, all of our Sanford police officers are also designated as code enforcement officers. So we've been involved in enforcing city code for a number of years. And of course, that's not all I'm doing as the Development Service Director. We still have the building department, we have planning, and some of these law changes that we're going to talk about don't necessarily apply to, for example, how we enforce building code. What we're going to talk about today specifically is how the laws that have changed recently affect how code enforcement is applied in the city.
Right, and it applies to everyone out there listening because especially if you're a Sanford resident, because if you decide to call us or send information online, there's something particular, major change that has gone into effect. Right,
Correct. So on July 1st of 2021, the governor signed a piece of legislation that was designed to make code enforcement more efficient by removing potentially these weaponized complaints, or what some of the legislation described as frivolous complaints. In other words, city governments were being pulled into neighborly disputes. And so they wanted a mechanism where they could kind of nullify some of that. And so what happened was a state law was enacted that said essentially, as code enforcement officers, we can no longer, effective July 1st, investigate code enforcement complaints that were lodged anonymously. In other words, you're going to have to provide some very basic information identifying yourself and the nature of the complaint before we can go out there and investigate it. And there's some exceptions to that rule, by the way.
There is, and I understand it has to do with some sort of, the exceptions include health-related or connected situations and scenarios. Am I correct?
Exactly. That's one component. So if we're dealing with issues that pose an imminent danger to the health or safety of people, or the destruction of natural resources, for example, then we can still take those complaints anonymously and we can look at those immediately. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of that's going to be discretionary now. It's going to be up to the code enforcement officers and the folks receiving the complaints to look at this complaint to determine if life safety issues exist or if the destruction of natural resources is likely. So, and I'm trying to think of an example. So, for example, if your neighbor had a house that might be vacant for a period of time, they're trying to sell it, and the pool fence had a hole in it, and there was children in the neighborhood. Well, that clearly, to me, that's a life safety issue. We need to fix the hole in the fence so that children can't get through there and potentially get into a life safety issue in the water. Or if you had a neighbor who was dumping hazardous material into a canal or a waterway that was going to drain into our ecosystem, clearly that's an issue. I think some of the problems, some of the consternation is going to come when we get across a plethora of these complaints, because I suspect that many of our folks who want to lodge these complaints anonymously are going to allege, well, that illegally parked car is a life safety issue, and that's going to be harder to justify. Last year we handled just over 9,000 code enforcement complaints in the city, and we did not track which ones were lodged anonymously and which ones were. We're going to do that this year. We're going to kind of track that and see what the numbers look like. But when you're handling almost 10,000 calls for service a year, you're going to have to find ways to work more efficiently. And so what I hope will come out of this piece of legislation is that it will allow our code enforcement officers more time to be proactive, to go out and look for the substantive violations rather than getting bogged down with what the state representatives have described as frivolous complaints, that kind of mire what we do a little bit.
Right, and again, underscoring, this is a state law that has changed, and a state law that the city of Sanford has to enforce.
Correct.
And
well,
so,
it's not that we enforce. It just,
that term is a little harsh, but
it's a state law that governs how we investigate code complaints.
Okay.
And I think, Lisa, I should mention too that nothing is going to prohibit a code enforcement officer who's driving around the city from seeing a violation and be able to enforce that. That doesn't apply here. This is not affected by this law change. Only complaints that we receive, either on the website, walk-ups, or phoned-in complaints that the complainant wants to be anonymous. That's the complaints that are impacted.
Okay, and so you're speaking about these types of ways that people can share their information to code enforcement. You mentioned 3 right there. There's website, Citizen Serve,
Correct.
And walk up coming right here to City Hall, 300 North Park Avenue.
Sure.
Making a phone call.
Yes.
And what's the number that you can call to code enforcement?
Yeah, if you get online and you look at the website, all of the instructions for either contacting us telephonically or using Citizen Serve, which is the application you just mentioned, are going to be as clear as day. Just follow the code enforcement link.
Okay.
And we'll be able to handle those complaints.
And that's sanfordfl.gov. Now, how many officers do we have out there, Tony, that are actually doing all this work for our residents?
So we have 4 code enforcement officers, one of which is a supervisor. And what we do is we try to split the areas around the city up evenly so that the workload is evenly distributed. And also it allows the officers to kind of develop an expertise in the areas that they're operating in, for example.
Okay. And so Citizen Serve, that is, we've talked about that before in a previous episode. It's been a while, though, since it was unveiled here at the city of Sanford. But it is a one-stop shop for specifically development services,
Sure.
which encompasses, like you said, permitting, code enforcement. But there is you just Google or type in Citizen Serve, and you will get to this webpage where it will walk you through step by step. And that is the way that the city of Sanford would like to prefer you to provide your information as it relates to code enforcement complaints, correct?
Certainly.
And you could do it on your mobile phone as well. So
Absolutely.
You can get to the city website on your mobile phone, and clear as day you'll find Citizen Serve, and you could do it so it's more convenient for you that way.
Yeah, it's especially important during the pandemic. I mean, we have migrated to a platform where person-to-person contact is not necessarily necessary anymore. We can go online. We could use this portal, Citizen Serve, to apply for such things as building permits. We use it for business tax receipts. We take code enforcement complaints and all of these things. So it's a very active portal. We certainly encourage our citizens to use it. But listen, if a citizen wants to come down here and interact personally with us,
yeah,
we are happy. We'll be there for you, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
Sure. And also to notate as well, citizens out there, residents out there, you're our eyes and ears as well, because the code enforcement, did you hear that? 4 code enforcement officers for a city that is what, 26 square miles?
26 square miles. We have a population of around 60,000 people. And right now, they're handling, over 9,000, almost 10,000 calls for service a year. So it's a very busy team. And we need our citizens out there as our eyes and ears to let us know when they identify problems or deficiencies that need to be addressed.
Yeah, thank you for that. So to sum up, Tony, what we're talking about here about the state law and anonymous complaints. People need to make sure that they understand, or if they can differentiate between the human services concern and if your neighbor's grass is growing too high. Those
Correct.
frivolous complaints that was mandated by the state of Florida state representatives, not our local representatives.
Right.
That's where this change came from.
That's correct.
So that is why Tony Raimondo is on our show today as our new Development Services Executive Director, and also to share with our residents and those listening that this new law, effective July
the 1st,
1,
2021, yep.
is now in effect, so that you are not surprised when you decide to contact the city of Sanford. We're hoping to educate you on these changes in case you have not heard about it and you're not engaged with state government, or we prefer you being engaged with local government, and that's thus the podcast here. And I know you're super busy, Tony, new on the job here. You have so much responsibility for our residents to make our city a wonderful place to live, work, and play. And thank you for that. And thank you for your time. Is there any last words that you'd like to say about this, just in general?
No, I would just like to emphasize one more time that this was not some policy that the city of Sanford engaged in. I've already experienced a little frustration with some of our residents. This was absolutely state legislators at work. This was our state government, and that's where if there's any frustration, those can be expressed through the processes that are appropriate. But other than that, listen, I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy to be a part of not only the code enforcement team, but with planning and building. And if there's a resident out there that's listening to this that would like to meet me, I would love to meet you. Stop by City Hall, stop by the code enforcement area, ask for me, and I'd like to come out and speak with you.
Great, Tony. We're so glad to have you on the show. And again, welcome to City Hall.
Thanks, Lisa.
This is Lisa Holder, Communications Officer for the City of Sanford. Sanford Says. You can find this podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and on the city website at sanfordfl.gov. Thank you for listening. Until next time, have a great day. Bye.